At the height of her success, Layla's world crumbled in an instant. But what if her collapse was no accident? The grand opening of Aqua Verve was everything Layla had dreamed it would be. The luxurious spa, with its sleek glass walls and serene waterfalls, had been her vision for years. As guests mingled in the softly lit garden, sipping champagne and admiring the tranquil ambience, Layla stood by Damien's side, greeting everyone with a warm smile. Damien, ever the charming host, wrapped his arm around her waist, whispering compliments that sounded like music to the crowd but felt hollow to Layla. Beneath her poised exterior, Layla couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease that had settled in her chest since morning. "Everything all right, darling?" Damien asked, his tone dripping with a concern that never quite reached his eyes. Layla forced a smile, trying to brush off her apprehension. "Just a little overwhelmed," she replied, taking a sip from the herbal drink Damien had handed her earlier. It was supposed to be a special blend created by the spa's in-house herbalist, a gesture meant to symbolize health and rejuvenation, core values of Aqua Verve. But as Layla drank, a strange bitterness lingered on her tongue, and a wave of dizziness washed over her. "Excuse me, everyone," Layla began, addressing the crowd as she took the stage. Her vision blurred slightly, and she blinked to clear it. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate the opening of Aqua Verve. This place is not just a business. It's a dream come true, a haven for those seeking peace and renewal." The applause that followed was enthusiastic, but Layla felt herself swaying. Her heart raced, and the world around her seemed to tilt. She gripped the podium, her knuckles whitening as she fought to steady herself. The faces in the crowd blurred, Damien's voice became distant, and the lights above flickered like stars about to fade. "Layla!" Damien's voice broke through the fog. His grip on her arm was firm, almost too tight. "Layla, are you okay?" Layla tried to respond, but her throat tightened. Panic rose as she realized she couldn't catch her breath. The room spun, and the murmurs of concern grew louder. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was Damien's expression, a mixture of worry and something else she couldn't quite place. The crowd gasped as Layla collapsed, her body crumpling to the floor. Damien knelt beside her, his face a mask of frantic concern. "Call an ambulance," he shouted, but the urgency in his voice felt forced, more for show than genuine fear. The guests, shocked and unsure of what to do, whispered among themselves, the joyous atmosphere of the event now shattered. In the back of the room, Nina, a spa assistant with a quiet presence, watched intently. She had noticed Layla's discomfort earlier, the slight hesitation when she sipped the herbal drink. Nina's instincts, honed from years of traditional healing practices in her family, told her something was wrong. Very wrong. As the paramedics arrived and carried Layla out, Nina's gaze lingered on Damien. His expression seemed rehearsed, his eyes scanning the room as if assessing who was watching. A chill ran down Nina's spine. She didn't know what was going on, but she knew she had to find out. Nina turned to leave, but just as she stepped outside, she noticed a small vial that had rolled out of Damien's coat pocket onto the floor. It was unlabeled, the liquid inside shimmering unnaturally under the lights. Without thinking, Nina pocketed the vial, her mind racing with questions. Was this the key to Layla's collapse? And if so, what dark secrets was Damien hiding? As Damien's eyes darted around, seemingly searching for the missing vial, Nina slipped into the shadows, clutching the vial tightly. She knew she had stumbled onto something dangerous, and the answers she needed might be more than she bargained for. She glanced back one last time at the ambulance speeding away with Layla inside, and then at Damien, who was now frantically whispering into his phone. The unease in Nina's gut twisted tighter. If her suspicions were correct, Layla's life was in far more danger than anyone realized, and the clock was already ticking. Layla lay unconscious in a private hospital room, her face pale against the stark white sheets. Damien sat by her bedside, holding her hand with a grip that seemed more possessive than comforting. Doctors and nurses moved around with professional urgency, their hushed conversations filled with medical jargon. Damien's brow was furrowed, but his eyes were elsewhere, his mind clearly racing with thoughts far removed from Layla's condition. "Stress and exhaustion," Damien told the doctors with an air of authority. "She's been working nonstop for this opening." His voice was smooth, almost too smooth, as if he had rehearsed these lines. But to Nina, who had followed them to the hospital under the guise of offering help, it sounded off. Something didn't sit right with her. Nina watched from the doorway, careful to remain unnoticed. Her quiet demeanor and unassuming nature often made her invisible to others, a trait she had found useful more than once. She recalled the herbal drink Damien had given Layla, and the way he insisted she try it despite her initial reluctance. Layla's symptoms didn't align with simple exhaustion or stress. There was something more sinister at play, and Nina's instincts screamed it was no accident. Determined to uncover the truth, Nina slipped back to Aqua Verve under the cover of night. She navigated the dimly lit hallways with ease, her footsteps silent on the polished floors. When she reached the small herb preparation room, she noticed the vial Damien had left behind, tucked away behind other benign herbs and teas. Nina carefully picked it up, her heart pounding. The label was foreign, not one of the spa's usual blends, and the contents had a faint, acrid smell. Back at the hospital, Layla stirred, her eyelids fluttering as she slowly regained consciousness. Damien, whose patience seemed to be wearing thin, immediately switched to a facade of relief. "Layla, thank goodness," he said, but the warmth in his voice rang hollow. He leaned in close, his smile strained. "I was so worried about you." Layla blinked, disoriented. Her head throbbed, and her vision was still blurry. She tried to speak, but her throat felt raw and her body weak. Damien's presence, once a source of comfort, now felt suffocating. She could sense something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. As Damien continued his soothing yet detached reassurances, Layla's instincts told her not to trust him completely. Meanwhile, Nina was on a mission of her own. She knew she had to act quickly. Whatever had happened to Layla was deliberate, and there was no telling if it could happen again. Using her knowledge of traditional remedies, Nina prepared an herbal antidote similar to one she had seen her grandmother use. It was a gamble, but it was Layla's best shot. The hospital staff, busy with their routines, barely noticed as Nina slipped into Layla's room and administered the remedy, whispering a silent prayer. Damien's phone buzzed, and he stepped out to take the call. It was a lawyer, one of the expensive ones he kept on retainer. "How soon can we push through the changes to her will?" Damien asked, his voice low and calculating. "I need this settled quickly." As Nina watched Damien from the corner of the room, she felt a jolt of anger and fear. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was darker than she had anticipated. She knew now, without a doubt, that Damien was behind Layla's sudden illness, and it was all about money and control. Nina quietly slipped back to Layla's room, her mind racing with the weight of what she had overheard. She leaned in close to Layla, whose eyes flickered open. "We need to talk," Nina whispered urgently, glancing at the door to ensure Damien wasn't near. "I think Damien did this to you, and I think he's planning something worse." Layla's eyes widened, fear mingling with the realization that her suspicions about Damien might be true. But before she could respond, the door creaked open and Damien re-entered, his expression now more guarded than ever. He looked between Layla and Nina, his smile tight and unconvincing. "Everything all right?" Damien asked, his gaze lingering on Nina as if sensing the shift in the air. Nina stepped back, her heart pounding. She knew they couldn't afford to tip their hand too soon, but the urgency to act was becoming unbearable. Layla nodded weakly, forcing a smile. "Fine," she said, though the fear in her eyes betrayed her words. As Damien moved closer to Layla, Nina caught sight of the shadow in his expression, a flicker of frustration, a hint of the danger that still loomed. She slipped the vial deeper into her pocket, her mind racing with the realization that the next move was critical. Damien couldn't know they were onto him, not yet. But as he glanced once more at Nina, suspicion clear on his face, she knew time was running out, and whatever Damien was planning, it was about to take a deadly turn. Layla woke up feeling groggy, her mind still foggy from the ordeal. She glanced around the room, trying to piece together the fragments of her memories. Damien was there, sitting by her bed, but his presence felt heavy, like a dark cloud looming over her. Layla's heart pounded as flashes of the spa opening, and the strange taste of the herbal drink resurfaced in her mind. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Damien noticed her stirring and leaned in, his expression a mix of relief and forced concern. "Layla, you're awake. I've been so worried," he said, his voice carefully modulated. But Layla, now more alert, picked up on the dissonance between his words and the coldness in his eyes. "I feel strange," Layla whispered, her voice raspy. She tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness washed over her, forcing her back down. "What happened?" "You collapsed at the opening," Damien explained, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "The doctors say it's just exhaustion. You've been pushing yourself too hard." Layla nodded slowly, but deep down she wasn't convinced. She caught a glimpse of Nina at the doorway, her eyes filled with urgency and something else, worry maybe. As Damien continued to drone on about her needing rest, Layla's gaze remained fixed on Nina, who subtly nodded, indicating that she wanted to talk alone. Later, when Damien stepped out to make a call, Nina seized the moment. She slipped into the room, her face serious but calm. "Layla, there's something you need to know," Nina began, her voice low but steady. "I think what happened to you wasn't an accident." Layla's eyes widened, a spark of fear and confusion flaring up. "What do you mean? Are you saying someone did this to me on purpose?" Nina nodded, her expression grave. She showed Layla the vial she had found at the spa. "I found this among the herbs that were used for your drink. It doesn't belong to the spa's stock. I believe it was tampered with." Layla's breath caught in her throat. She thought back to the drink Damien had handed her, his insistence that she try it. Pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place, forming a picture that made her stomach churn. "Damien gave me that drink," she said softly, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Are you saying he—" "I can't say for certain," Nina interrupted gently, "but I think it's a possibility we need to consider. There are too many coincidences, and his behavior is off." Layla's mind raced, recalling the subtle shifts in Damien's demeanor, the moments she had brushed off as stress or her own paranoia. But now, with Nina's revelation, the dots connected in a way that made horrifying sense. Damien had always been charming, but there had been flashes of something darker, a controlling side masked by his charisma. "Why would he do this?" Layla asked, tears welling in her eyes. "We have everything we could ever want." Nina hesitated before answering. "Sometimes it's not about what you have. It's about control, power, or something else entirely. I overheard him talking to a lawyer about changing your will. It seems like he's after more than just your love, Layla." Layla's heart sank as the truth became undeniable. Damien's concern, his constant hovering, wasn't about her well-being. It was about securing his grip on her fortune. Her body trembled as anger and betrayal coursed through her. The man she had trusted with her life, her dreams, was plotting against her. "We need to be careful," Nina continued, her voice firm but compassionate. "I can help you, but we have to gather more evidence. You can't confront him yet. It's too dangerous." Layla nodded, her resolve hardening. "He won't see this coming," she said, a newfound determination in her voice. "I won't let him get away with this." Just then, the door creaked open, and Damien reappeared, his eyes narrowing slightly as he saw Nina by Layla's side. He plastered on his usual smile, but there was a flicker of something colder behind his gaze. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his voice overly casual as he stepped closer, his presence looming. Layla forced a smile, nodding weakly. "Just talking with Nina," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Damien's eyes lingered on Nina for a moment too long, suspicion flickering across his face. He glanced down at Layla, and for the briefest second, his mask slipped. A flash of irritation, maybe even anger, tightening his features before he quickly covered it up. As Damien turned away, Nina subtly mouthed to Layla, "We have to act fast." Layla nodded, her heart racing. She realized that time was slipping away, and if they didn't find a way to expose Damien soon, he might strike again, this time with far deadlier intent. Damien's phone buzzed again, and he excused himself, stepping into the hallway. Layla and Nina exchanged a tense look. They needed to move quickly, but they were playing a dangerous game, and one wrong step could cost Layla everything. As the door clicked shut behind Damien, Layla whispered, "We need to find proof, and we need it now. Before he finds out we're onto him." Nina nodded, but before she could respond, they heard Damien's voice rise angrily from the hallway. Layla and Nina strained to hear, catching snippets of Damien's heated conversation. Words like "finished" and "can't wait any longer" echoed ominously. Layla's breath hitched, and she looked at Nina with alarm. Whatever Damien was planning, it was about to happen soon, and they had no time to waste. Layla lay still in her hospital bed, eyes half closed, feigning the weakness she no longer felt. Every minute spent in that room felt like a test of her patience, but she knew it was necessary. Damien's visits had grown less frequent, his excuses flimsy and transparent. She pretended not to notice his cold detachment, the way he barely looked at her anymore, and instead poured her energy into the plan she and Nina had devised. Nina, with her quiet resolve, had taken on the role of a silent detective. Under the guise of helping out at Aqua Verve, she began collecting evidence. Late at night, when the spa was empty, she combed through Damien's office, searching for anything that would confirm their suspicions. She found spreadsheets with financial discrepancies, falsified documents, and emails that hinted at Damien's involvement in schemes far darker than Layla had ever imagined. It was clear. Damien had been siphoning money from Layla's charity for months, and her collapse was supposed to be the final piece of his plan. Damien, now growing desperate, scheduled a clandestine meeting at Aqua Verve with a shady associate. Nina, anticipating his next move, alerted the authorities and laid a trap. She watched from a hidden corner as Damien paced the spa's serene hallways, his expression more anxious and erratic than ever. He glanced at his watch repeatedly, muttering to himself as if rehearsing the lies he'd been spinning for so long. As Damien's contact arrived, the two men retreated to a private room near the back of the spa. Nina, her heart pounding, discreetly placed her phone against the door to record their conversation. Every word dripped with malice as Damien detailed his plans to drain the last of Layla's accounts and disappear. The associate, an equally shady figure, nodded along, confirming that he could handle loose ends, a phrase that made Nina's skin crawl. But before Damien could finalize his plot, the spa's front doors burst open. Police officers streamed in, their footsteps echoing off the marble floors. Damien's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. He bolted from the room, his polished composure shattered, but the police were ready. They cornered him in the lobby, his frantic attempts to escape proving futile. "Damien Steele, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder," the officer declared, handcuffing Damien as he struggled in vain. The look of shock and fury on Damien's face was priceless. He had never imagined his carefully curated world would come crashing down so spectacularly. Watching from her hidden spot, Nina felt a surge of relief. She clutched the phone, her hands trembling with adrenaline. She had done it, they had done it. Layla was safe, and Damien's web of deceit was finally exposed. Meanwhile, Layla was lying in bed, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and exhaustion. She kept glancing at the clock, wondering what was happening with Nina's plan. She knew they were close to exposing Damien, but the waiting was agonizing. Just as she began to lose hope, the door opened and Nina stepped in, her expression a mix of triumph and relief. Layla immediately sat up, sensing that something significant had happened. "It's over," Nina said softly, sitting beside her. Damien was arrested at the spa. The police caught him red-handed, trying to finalize his plans. They have all the evidence now: fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Layla's breath hitched as the weight of Nina's words settled in. She felt a mix of sorrow and vindication wash over her. The man she once loved, who had been her confidant and partner, was now unmasked as a dangerous, selfish stranger who had nearly taken her life for money. As Nina continued explaining the details, Layla couldn't help but feel a strange sense of closure. She had spent so long doubting herself, questioning her instincts, and now she finally had the truth. But just as relief began to flood her, Nina's phone buzzed again, her face darkening as she read the message. "Nina, what's wrong?" Layla asked, her heart pounding once more. Nina looked up, her eyes shadowed with worry. "The police found something else in Damien's files, an account tied to someone else close to you. They think there might be another player involved, someone who isn't behind bars yet." Layla's stomach dropped, her brief moment of peace shattered. "Who could it be?" she whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. Nina shook her head. "We don't know yet, but whoever it is, they're still out there. And if Damien was working with them, they might still be a threat." Layla nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we need to find out who it is. We can't let them keep hiding in the shadows." Nina squeezed her hand. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Layla. We've come this far, and we're not stopping now. As Layla processed this new twist, she realized their fight was far from over. Damien might be gone, but the danger still loomed, and they needed to stay one step ahead if they were going to bring the rest of the truth to light. Layla and Nina stood outside the newly reopened spa, now renamed Serenity Springs. The grand structure glowed under the morning sun, its glass walls reflecting a future filled with hope and renewal. This was not just a business anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, a sanctuary for those who needed healing, both inside and out. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, but Layla felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Damien's arrest and the initial threat behind her, she was free to move forward and redefine her life, though the knowledge of another player still lurking kept her vigilant. As they stepped through the front doors, Layla glanced at the spa's new mission statement displayed prominently on the wall. A place of peace, empowerment, and new beginnings. It was Nina's idea, encapsulating everything they had endured and everything they hoped to offer others. Together, they had transformed the spa into a wellness center that catered not only to the wealthy, but also to women seeking solace and support in their darkest times. The community center, nestled within the spa's tranquil surroundings, buzzed with quiet activity. Women gathered in small groups, some engaging in meditation sessions, others attending workshops on financial independence and self-care. Layla and Nina walked through the hallways, greeted by warm smiles and nods of gratitude. They had become beacons of strength, showing others that even the deepest wounds could be healed. "Nina, I can't believe how far we've come," Layla said, her voice filled with awe. "This place, it's everything I hoped it would be and more." Nina nodded, her eyes scanning the busy rooms filled with life and hope. "It's not just us, Layla. Everyone here has brought their strength, their stories. We're all rebuilding together." Layla paused at a window overlooking the spa's peaceful garden. She watched as a group of women tended to the plants, their laughter mingling with the soft trickle of water from a nearby fountain. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of her recent past, a beautiful reminder that life could bloom even after the harshest storms. That afternoon, Layla held a small ceremony to officially dedicate Serenity Springs as a place of healing and empowerment. She stood before a gathering of guests, her heart pounding with gratitude and pride. "Today is not just about a new beginning for this spa," Layla began, her voice steady. "It's about new beginnings for all of us. We've all faced challenges, moments when we thought we couldn't go on. But standing here, surrounded by so much strength and kindness, I know that we are capable of so much more than we think." The audience erupted in applause, a testament to the shared struggles and triumphs of everyone present. Layla looked at Nina, who nodded encouragingly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Layla continued, "Serenity Springs is not just my dream anymore. It's a shared vision, a commitment to helping each other find peace, strength, and a fresh start. I couldn't have done this without all of you, especially Nina, whose courage and wisdom saved my life." Nina stepped forward, taking Layla's hand. "We're in this together," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And we will continue to stand by every woman who walks through these doors, offering the support and care they need to rebuild their lives." As the ceremony concluded, Layla and Nina mingled with the guests, sharing stories and listening to the journeys of those who had found refuge at Serenity Springs. The atmosphere was filled with hope, each conversation reinforcing the impact of their mission. Later that evening, as the last of the guests departed, Layla and Nina stood outside, watching the sun set over the city. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a fitting end to a day filled with new beginnings. "Nina, I've been thinking," Layla said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I want to expand Serenity Springs, maybe open centers in other cities. There are so many women out there who need a safe place, a fresh start." Nina smiled, her gaze still fixed on the horizon. "I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." Layla nodded, feeling a surge of excitement and determination. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Nina by her side, anything felt possible. They had turned their pain into purpose, their struggles into strength, and their friendship into a foundation for change. Yet, the lingering shadow of the unknown collaborator kept them on edge, a reminder that there was still unfinished business. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Layla's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen, a message from an unknown number. Her brow furrowed as she read the text. You think it's over? It's not. There are things you don't know about Damien, and secrets still buried. If you want the truth, meet me at the old waterfront pier tonight. Come alone. Layla's heart skipped a beat, and she showed the message to Nina, who frowned, her eyes narrowing. This could be the other player, Nina said, her voice edged with concern. They're still out there watching. What do you think we should do? Layla asked, her voice tinged with both curiosity and apprehension. Nina looked at the message, then back at Layla, her expression a mix of caution and resolve. We've come too far to back down now, she said. But we can't walk into this blind. Let's be smart, find out who this is, and make sure they can't hurt you, or anyone else, ever again. Layla nodded, her resolve hardening. We'll face it together. And this time we'll finish it. With renewed determination, Layla and Nina turned towards the city lights, ready to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle. Their journey wasn't quite finished, but they were stronger and more united than ever. As they walked away, the flicker of the stars above seemed to mirror the light of their resolve, no longer afraid of the shadows, but ready to chase them down and bring everything into the light. Layla parked her car at the old waterfront pier, her heart racing as she reread the cryptic message on her phone. You think it's over? It's not. There are things you don't know about Damien, and secrets still buried. If you want the truth, meet me at the old waterfront pier tonight. Come alone. She had debated telling Nina, but in the end, she knew Nina would understand the need for caution and secrecy. They had agreed that Nina would stay nearby, keeping a watchful eye from the shadows, ready to step in if anything went wrong. The pier was dimly lit, the quiet lapping of water against the old wooden beams the only sound breaking the stillness of the night. Layla stepped out of her car, pulling her coat tighter against the chill as she made her way cautiously toward the meeting point. Every creak of the wooden boards beneath her feet heightened her sense of unease, but she pressed on, determined to face whatever awaited her. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the pier, and Layla's pulse quickened. As she approached, the figure stepped into the light, revealing Victor, Damien's old business partner. Layla's breath caught in her throat. She had only met Victor a few times, and he had always seemed like a quiet, unassuming presence in the background. She had never imagined he could be involved in anything so sinister. Victor, Layla said, keeping her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her. You're the one who sent the message? Victor nodded, his expression a mix of regret and determination. I didn't want it to come to this, Layla, but you deserve to know the full truth. Damien wasn't working alone, and there are others who still pose a threat to you and to Serenity Springs. Layla took a cautious step closer, her eyes never leaving his. Why now? Why didn't you come forward sooner? Victor sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I was complicit, Layla. I helped Damien with his schemes because I thought it was just business, manipulating finances, pushing you out. But when Damien started talking about the will, about making sure you were taken care of, I knew things had gone too far. I tried to pull away, but it was too late. I was in too deep. Layla's anger flared, but she kept her composure. And poisoning me? Was that just business too? Victor looked genuinely pained. I didn't know he would do that. That was all Damien. I swear, I never wanted you hurt. When I found out, I was horrified. That's why I'm here now. I need to set things right, and you need to know there are others, powerful people, still pulling strings. Layla hesitated, weighing his words. She glanced around, knowing Nina was nearby, hidden but ready to act if needed. What do you want from me, Victor? I need your help, Victor admitted, his voice heavy with guilt. I have information, evidence of other people Damien was working with. They're still out there, and they're dangerous. I can give you what you need to bring them down, but I need protection. They'll come after me if they know I talked. Layla studied Victor's face, searching for any hint of deception. She thought of all the pain and chaos Damien had caused, and the idea of more people being involved made her blood run cold. Why should I believe you? She asked, her voice edged with suspicion. Victor's gaze met hers, steady and unflinching. You don't have to trust me, Layla, but if you want to end this for good, you need what I have. Help me, and I'll help you take them down. Layla took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She knew she couldn't trust Victor completely, but she also knew that the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. She glanced briefly in the direction where Nina was hidden, drawing strength from the knowledge that she wasn't truly alone in this. "Okay," Layla said finally, her voice firm. "But this is your last chance, Victor. If you cross me, I won't hesitate to make sure you're held accountable for everything." Victor nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of her words. "I'm ready to do what's right." As Layla turned to leave, she felt a mixture of fear and determination. The shadows around her felt less daunting with Nina watching from nearby, a silent guardian in the night. Together, they would face whatever darkness still lurked, and Layla vowed that this time, they would leave no stone unturned. As she drove away from the pier, Layla's phone buzzed again. A new message, this time from Nina. "I'm right behind you. We'll finish this together." Layla smiled, her resolve strengthened. They were closer than ever to uncovering the full truth, and with Nina by her side, she knew they would see it through to the end. Layla and Nina sat in the conference room of Serenity Springs, surrounded by papers, laptops, and a whiteboard filled with scribbled names and connections. Victor's revelations had sent them down a path of uncovering the remaining threads of Damien's web, a network of deceit that stretched far beyond what they initially imagined. The evidence Victor provided pointed to influential figures still operating in the shadows, using the chaos Damien created to cover their tracks. "We're almost there," Nina said, flipping through the latest files Victor had delivered. These transactions link directly to the remaining conspirators. They're using shell companies to hide the money they siphoned from your charity. Layla nodded, her mind sharp and focused. She had come a long way from the woman who had once felt trapped in her own life. Now she was leading the charge, determined to bring everyone involved to justice. "We need to be careful. They'll know we're closing in." Just then, Victor entered the room, looking more haggard than before but resolute. "I spoke with a contact inside their circle," he said. "They're getting nervous. They know something's up, but they don't suspect how close you are to exposing them." Nina glanced at Victor, still wary of his intentions. "We can't take any chances. If they realize what we're doing, they'll try to bury everything." Layla took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their mission, but also the strength that had brought them this far. "We need to act now. Let's gather everything and go to the authorities. It's time to end this." With their plans set, Layla, Nina, and Victor compiled all the evidence, meticulously organizing it into a presentation that would make their case undeniable. They contacted a trusted prosecutor known for taking on corruption cases, someone they knew wouldn't be swayed by the influence of those they were about to expose. Later that day, they walked into the prosecutor's office, nerves buzzing but resolve firm. The prosecutor, a stern but fair woman named Marissa Collins, listened intently as they laid out the web of corruption, fraud, and attempted murder that had nearly cost Layla her life. As they finished their presentation, Marissa leaned back in her chair, a look of determination crossing her face. "This is big," Marissa said, her tone serious. "Bigger than I thought. But you've got them. We'll move fast before they have a chance to cover their tracks." "Thank you for bringing this forward." Layla exhaled, the tension that had been building for weeks finally beginning to release. "We just want to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." Marissa nodded. "We'll make sure of it. You have my word." As they left the prosecutor's office, Layla felt lighter, the burden of the past finally lifting. She turned to Nina and Victor, her heart full of gratitude. "We did it. We're finally putting an end to this." Nina smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "You were incredible, Layla. You never gave up, even when things were at their darkest." Victor, still grappling with his own role in the events, offered a quiet nod. "I'm just glad I could help set things right. I owe you both more than I can ever repay." Layla reached out, placing a hand on Victor's shoulder. "It's never too late to do the right thing. You helped us finish what Damien started, and for that, I'm grateful." In the days that followed, the legal process moved swiftly. With the evidence Layla, Nina, and Victor provided, Marissa's team conducted raids and arrests, bringing down the network of conspirators that had tried to profit off Layla's downfall. The news spread quickly, and Serenity Springs became a beacon of hope, not just for the women who sought refuge there, but for the entire community. At the grand reopening of Serenity Springs, Layla stood before a crowd of supporters, survivors, and new faces eager to be part of the change. "This place started as a dream," Layla said, her voice clear and strong. "A dream of peace, of healing, and of new beginnings. Today, it stands as proof that no matter how dark things get, there is always light on the other side. Together, we can overcome anything." The audience erupted in applause, their energy vibrant and hopeful. Layla glanced at Nina, who gave her a thumbs up, her eyes shining with pride. Victor stood in the back, blending in but present, a quiet testament to the power of redemption. As the ceremony continued, Layla felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Marissa, the prosecutor, smiling warmly. "We got them," Marissa said. "All of them. And it's because of you." Layla's eyes welled with tears of relief and joy. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in us." Marissa nodded. "You've inspired a lot of people, Layla. Keep doing what you're doing." Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Layla and Nina stood on the steps of Serenity Springs, watching as families and friends lingered, sharing stories and laughter. The spa was no longer just a sanctuary. It was a symbol of resilience and the strength found in unity. "Nina," Layla said softly, turning to her friend, "I couldn't have done this without you." Nina smiled, her hand finding Layla's. "We did this together, and we're just getting started." Layla gazed out at the bright lights of the city, feeling a peace she hadn't known in a long time. "For the first time, I feel like we're exactly where we're meant to be." Nina squeezed her hand, their bond stronger than ever. "Here's to the next chapter," she said, raising an imaginary glass. Layla laughed, her heart full. "To new beginnings." As they stood together, the lights of Serenity Springs glowing behind them, they knew their journey wasn't just about fighting darkness. It was about building a future where light and hope always prevailed. And together, they were ready for whatever came next. If you enjoyed Layla's journey of resilience and uncovering hidden truths, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps us out. And if you want more captivating stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.